Hey, welcome back to our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Well, today's project is to fix the water damaged top of this antique buffet. It's absolutely beautiful. It's made out of oak. It's been in the same family since it was purchased, probably in the 1880s, 1890s. It has some local interest as well, as it bears the tag from Collins Furniture, which was in Ackworth, Georgia, just a couple of miles from our shop here. Now, there's some question as to whether or not this was manufactured by them or simply sold by them. They were a furniture company, and they were also associated with the family funeral business, and I believe when they first opened up they were making caskets. So I don't know if they made it or just sold it, but regardless, we've been entrusted to fix some damage from a leak up on the second floor. Let me bring you in and I'll show you what we're up against. And this is the area of damage. Water unfortunately poured down on this piece. Now this piece does have a hutch, but it's not with it. It also has all the drawers, but the owners retained those, made it a little bit easier for me to move it and get it here into the shop. So this is what we have to fix, and it's going to involve a complete stripping and refinishing of the top. Now this is not the original finish. The owner tells me it was refinished maybe 20 years ago, so that takes a little bit of the pressure off for sure. And something that we need to note as we refinish this, you can see how dark the color is along the edges, and this main field is a little bit lighter, so we want to duplicate that to maintain the aged look. That's important to the owner. We also have to match not only the color but the gloss on the rest of the piece. So the first step is to mask this all off and then get this old finish off. So here we go. And before I mask it off, I wanted you to see this tag of J.F. Collins, Ackworth, Georgia. You can see that there is some finish that has got its way onto the back of this piece, probably from the last refinishing. And here's the other tag, which reads number 6 base for sideboard numbers, and there's a series of numbers there. So this was obviously made for multiple uses. You can see it has round nails rather than square ones, and the drawers were machine cut dovetails. So this is all consistent with this piece being from the late 1800s. So let's get to work. Okay, she's all taped up and ready to go. Just spend a couple of seconds here with a scraper on the damaged area. And the interesting thing is that there doesn't appear to be any color whatsoever in the wood. You would have expected a piece like this to have been dyed with an aniline dye or maybe even fumed to get this color. But during the last refinishing, apparently whoever did it, and there's nothing wrong with it, put all the color in the finish. So we're going to see how much this we can strip off or scrape off, and then how much we're going to have to use a stripper to get it off. So here we go. And the finish is really powdering right up. I'm just using this Baco scraper. I think I'm going to try to get as much of this finish off with scrapers before I expose this piece to any chemical stripper. It's just as easy for me to scrape most of this finish off as it is to strip it off. We were able to get most of that old finish off with a scraper. You know, there's some still on the wood, and of course the edge molding here, I don't want to try to scrape that for fear of damaging it. So what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of stripper on a piece of steel wool and very carefully work the last of the finish off, and trying to control drips and keep it nice and neat. It really shouldn't take very long at all to get the rest of this finish off. But you can see by doing it this way, we're not running the risk of scratching this molding, particularly the edge grain. Okay, there's the top with the finish stripped off. I'm really glad we scraped off the majority of it. It was pretty sticky getting it off. I think we did a good job. We don't have any damage to the top. So what I'm doing now is I'm just wiping this down with a very lightly dampened rag. That water, of course, will neutralize the stripper. And once this top thoroughly dries, we can start the refinishing process. And we're back after a little lunch and just maybe a little nap. And let's start sanding this. This is a piece of 150 on a block. And we'll we'll sand this entire top. And we'll also take the sandpaper and very carefully, by hand, sand this molded edge. So that's what I'll be doing for the next half hour or so. Yeah, I think this is going to get us much closer to where we want to be. Well, I think that was the right decision. There's our top, and there's the base. And again, it's this color here that we're working towards. And I think that was a good first step. I'm glad we did that. All right, we're going to let this have about an hour to dry, and then we'll shoot a coat of sealer on it. Let's shoot a coat of sealer on this. And this is the product I use. Good morning, it's the next day. Last night I came in, sanded the top, shot another coat of sealer on it, and early this morning I sanded that back with 320 gold. I don't believe the top is going to require a grain filler. Again, we're trying to match the texture to the existing, so I think it's time to move forward and start to color match this, so here we go. Okay, we're shooting down on the piece. This obviously is the top that we put a little bit of stain on, and here's a portion of the underlying color that's been pretty well, I guess I say, worn or exposed by the action of the drawers. And then you can see that same color here, here, and here. I know it doesn't look close on the camera because this is showing as much lighter than it really is, but this, and this are very, very close. So what we're going to be working to doing is getting these darker colors on there and leaving portions of this color to shine through, especially through the center portion of the field. If you remember, we had, darkness across here and then a little bit lighter here. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to start with some Van Dyke brown glaze and see how it goes. And this is the glaze that I use. Glaze is just a coloring medium. This one's oil-based. It's designed to go between top coat layers. It's pretty opaque, which is the finish type that we need to match existing. Here we go. You can dilute this oil-based glaze with naphtha or mineral spirits if you so choose, but in this instance I want to get the full darkening that the glaze can offer. And what's nice about this system is that if this doesn't come out the way you want, just take some mineral spirits and you can brush it or wipe it right off. Okay, that is definitely pulling us in the right direction. All right, let me get this on and I'll show you how I tool it. And there, with one application, you can see how much closer we are. And we haven't done anything with the glaze, it's just on there. We haven't begun to tool it off, but you can see we pulled that very much closer to the darker color on the base and the sides. We're on our way. Let me show you how I tool this. Okay, you can leave or take off as much glaze as you want, and I do it with a chip brush and a rag. It's kind of a dry brush technique, and always with the grain. Or it will look horribly unnatural when it's done. And of course, this is just our first coat. That's how we tool it off. And as this starts to dry, and this is still a little bit on the loose side, but I wanted to show this to you. By dry brushing more in the center, I'm going to lighten up that portion of our field, but yet keeping it in the same color family so it looks natural. And I'm hoping that that shows up on the camera. So I'm going to dry brush in here more so than in here, and then wherever there's that transition between the two, just stroke it out with the brush so it remains looking nice and natural. But just as in the original, we'll gently lighten that center field. Always using your artist's eye and making sure it stays looking natural. And with just the one coat of glaze properly applied, that's how much closer we've gotten this finish to where we need to go. Now, to my eye, when you see this darkness here, that's black to me. So I think that once we have the glaze coat the way we want, we may be able to spray some black toner judiciously on the top to blend in with the existing black, like right there. That's it. We're having problems with the sun affecting the view of the white top, but trust me when I tell you, we're very, very close. Okay, we're going to let this set. This needs between 2 and 6 hours to dry. The manufacturer would like it top coated within 6 hours. In my experience, it takes a bit of time to dry. So I've got the heat on in the shop. We're going to leave this for 3 or 4 hours, and then we'll come back in and top coat this. It's been about 4.5 hours, so let's put a top coat of lacquer on this. And as you can see, I've got wax paper and tape over those labels so that we don't get any finish on those. We'll give that about an hour to dry. We'll come back out here, see how it looks, see what we got to do to adjust our color. Okay, it's been about an hour or so. We let the lacquer dry. I think you'll agree that the color match is looking really good. I do think that we need to put a little black on this, and as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that perhaps a black glaze would be a better choice than a black toner. Only because I think it would blend in better with the existing finish. So let's get to it. And here we go. Just got to remember also that the tops normally are a little bit lighter than the bottoms. And this glaze has been thinned with some naphtha, so it will dry faster than the last set that we used. It is drying a lot faster. Okay, I've got a little mineral spirits on my brush right now. This is going to allow me to brush this out because it has dried very quickly. But that's the one of the beauties of using glaze, is it's pretty forgiving until you top coat it. Then you're stuck with it. Okay, we've got a second coat of lacquer on this piece, the first coat over the black. I think the color looks great. I think we've pretty well got a rope around the color issues when it comes to this project. So the next step for me, which is really boring for you, is just to continue to shoot layers of lacquer sand, basically building my top coat. You don't need to see that. You've already seen me spray lacquer. It's not that exciting. So I'll take care of that. If anything comes up that's worth sharing with you, I'll bring you back for that. But in general, I think we have a really good result here. I'm real happy with it. And I will see you when I get the lacquer finish built up on this, and we'll go on from there. So thanks. We'll be right back. And good morning. It's the next day. We're into the home stretch. We're putting the final coats of lacquer on the top. But between coats, I flipped the piece on its back and put it on the hydraulic table so I could start to clean and polish it for the owners. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was this trim piece was loose, and in fact came off, and it was really only held in by a little tiny broken rusty brad, which is right here, and all this old glue had failed. So very, very lucky that we were able to catch this as we were, rather than have this fall off and either break or get lost, because we would never be able to find a piece like this. We'd have to make one. So what I'm going to do is either pull out what's left of this nail or pound it flush. Then I'll scrape all this glue off, and we'll re-glue this piece using hot hide glue. Here's that broken nail. Let's see if we can get it out. There it is. And we're going to very carefully scrape off any of this leftover glue. And I'm trying not to disturb the finish adjacent to it. Here we go. That should take care of it. She's back where she belongs. And I'm just going to go along with this dye marker in any place where there's chips or dings. Just color them in so they're not quite so obvious. And this is what I'm using, a ProMark dye marker. It's by Mohawk. And one of the things I almost always do for a client piece when I'm drawing to the close is to polish it up for them. And I really basically am just waxing it and then cleaning it, waxing it, and then buffing the wax off. I've done a lot of this. Again, I have to work around this repair we just did, but let me show you what I do on a drawer. I think that'd be a good way for me to show you. So here we go. And here's the face of one of the drawers. You can remove the hardware to do this if you wish, but normally when I'm just doing a polish job, I don't bother removing the hardware. First step is a light cleaning. This piece came out of an immaculate home, and it's not going to be dirty. So I just have some Dawn dishwashing detergent and some water in a spray bottle, and I just use that to wipe the surface down. And you can see there's no dirt on that. We'll just give it a second to dry. This is the wax product that I use, Howard's Feed and Wax. Obviously they're not a sponsor, but I use it. It works well for me. When I'm dealing with a polyurethane or a lacquer finish, you know, a real thin coat and a real thin buff is all you need. Sometimes on old shellac finishes, they seem to need to have this lay on them for just a little while. I think the oil in it helps the old shellac, to be honest with you. This is a shellac finish. It's not that old. It's about 20 years old. And we're going to apply some feed and wax, and I'll show you how I do it. Okay, I have a bottle that's about empty. I want to use that up. And I set this outside in the sun, and it all melted. But anyways, I just put this feed and wax on fairly liberally on an old shellac finish. And in general, I'm either rubbing with the grain or a circular motion. It really doesn't matter because I'm not grinding this in. And very seldom will you want to put as much of this feed and wax on as I have. But frankly, it got away from me when I poured it out. And based upon the way the rest of the piece has responded to this treatment, I'm going to let this sit on here for 15-20 minutes, half hour, and I'll bring you back. And about a half hour or so has passed. I've just got a microfiber cloth here that's I've been using all day with the wax, and just going to wipe this off. So we've wiped off all the excess wax that's on here. And hopefully the finish has had whatever it needed. And then we'll let this sit for another hour or so. Come back and buff it the best we can. There's a bit of alligator finish on this. That isn't going to polish up completely, but I think it's going to glow pretty nicely. Well, I think that's going to do it for this one. This was a great project. I really enjoyed it. If you remember, we had a damaged top, and the challenge was to color match it to the existing antique finish. And using two different kinds of glazes, we were able to match the color as well as give it some of that darkness that came with the antique that you see. on the front. So in addition to the top, I reinstalled the wheels, I fixed a broken latch on the door, fixed up some chips, color matched some dings on corners, and then we gave the whole piece a nice wax polish, and she's ready to go home. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe if you've got a project like this, you might have picked up a few tips. So from our shop just outside Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards, thanks for watching, take good care, and remember, just wood color and some shiny stuff. We'll see you next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.